All right, so this is going to be the last installment, hopefully, of our drafting lessons. So what you're looking at here is a floor plan that has a symbol here for where the elevations are located. So this in the middle, I'm going to be writing in the sheet number and the number of sheets page to find those elevations. And the elevations are labeled 1, 2, 3, and 4 going in a clockwise direction. I have an example of a dimension here, the kind of dimension I'd like you to put on these plans, just an overall dimension. And we've got the spaces labeled. So I'm also going to be showing you how to create guidelines for your text that's all the same height. Down here at the corner of the page, we have the sheet number and number of sheets, and then we have the title, the scale of the drawing, and who it was drawn by. On the elevations page, there are elevations labeled 1, 2, 3, and 4. They match the room elevations that are tagged. These are all titles, so notice that they're all at 1/4 of an inch in height. And then these are the kinds of dimensions that you would put on the elevation to indicate heights. And again, we have at the bottom of the corner of the page, we have the title, the scale, the date drawn by, and sheet number and number of sheets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add dimensions to one of these elevations to show you how I did the one on the top so you can see the process. And then on this page, maybe I'll write like a typical note or something like that. Or I'm definitely going to add some other dimensions to this space. Okay, so what you want to do first is measure out a distance of about 1/2 an inch from the edge of the wall line. So where's a 1/2 an inch right there. I'm going to do that in 2 places. And then using a straight edge, this is a rolling ruler that got broken because it wasn't well taken care of. Use a straight edge to put in a construction line. And then if I wanted to locate the window and put that information in, so I could go from the exterior wall to the edge of the window, to the edge of the window, and then to the interior wall, I may want to have a second string of dimensions out here that goes from the edge of the wall to the inside edge of the wall on this side. Remember to place dimensions that you actually know the dimension of. Since we didn't measure this house or this space from the outside, we don't know what the outside dimensions are. And then we're going to place another construction line for a dimension line 1/4 of an inch away from the first dimension line. So now I've got all the construction line work established. Let's go ahead and put the extension lines off of the window. And I have an idea of where my dimensions are going to go. These are construction lines, however, so now if I want to make those lines a little bit darker to show where those dimensions are going to be going, I'd go back to this extension line here. And using the rolling technique to create a thin line, I'm going to create a thin line off of the inside edge of that wall. And we'll go to do the same thing on the other side, off of the inside edge of the wall. And notice that I'm letting that thin line go past the construction line for the outermost dimension line. And then I want to draw a thin line. Make sure I have enough lead here. A thin line going from, fix that. Don't have that held down well enough. hold it here, where my fingers are at the edge of the rolling ruler. And I'm just spinning that as I go across. If you make a mistake, just erase and do it again. Don't try to draw over your lines because they will get messy. All right, so then this has a tick mark here, 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 and here to locate the window. And we want construction line, or actually dimension line coming across here. And we want 2 tick marks there and there. So the dimension should fit just above the dimension line. And your guidelines for your dimensions should be 1/8 of an inch to 3/32. So 3/32 of an inch is that space right there. So that's the smallest you want to make the text. Or if you do 1/8 of an inch, then you're looking at just a little bit larger right here. So I'm going to make some marks using the 1/8 of an inch. And I want to draw those marks so that they're approximately 1/16 of an inch above the dimension line. So I'm actually going to make 1/16 of an inch dot first above the dimension line, and then I'm going to go 1/8 of an inch above that. And if you do have a rolling ruler, you can line it up with the dimension line and just roll back to that first dot. There it is. And I'm going to put a construction line all the way across all those dimensions, and then go through the second dot and to another construction line through those dimensions. So those 2 construction lines there and there are representing 1/8 of an inch distance between each other. And then we'll do the same thing for the second dimension string. I'm going to put a little dot where 1/16 of an inch is, and then go up 1/8 of an inch from that. That should still give you plenty of room to put your dimension. So don't use the dimension line as one of your construction lines. Should be a separate construction line. I'm going to get in close here so you can see that detail. So there's a separate construction line for the text here and here. Okay. Now I have my guidelines in place, so I can go ahead and letter. And I'm not in a great position to letter, so I'm just going to pick this whole thing up. You can do this too. Turn it in this direction, because we're reading these drawings either from this direction or from the right of the sheet. And now I can put in my dimensions. And I have to use my scale to figure out what this dimension is. So this looks to be 8 inches. The dimension between here and here is 2 foot 9. And the dimension from here to here is 4 feet 9. And then my dimension from wall to wall should be 8 foot 3. I remember that from doing the field measuring. And I probably should have made sure I added these up to see if that works out. So this is 4, 6, 18, so that makes that 7 foot 6 plus 8 is 8 feet 2 inches, I think we left over. So let's make this a 9 inch as well, and I think we've got it. So you want to make sure these dimensions here add up to the overall dimensions. And I probably should have gone back to my field notes to make sure that I got that right. So that's how we're going to add dimensions to our drawings. Very neatly spaced equidistant from each other. So notice that I put the overall dimension out a total of 1/2 inch plus 1/4 inch, so I can fit that inside dimension in here. For the dimensions for the elevations, I'm going to keep the elevation dimensions on this top elevation. Really can work for both of these views, but I want to repeat some dimensions down here so I can understand that these have the same heights. So I'm going to end up adding some similar dimensions that I have here, and we're going to use the same strategies. I'm going to put some, well, here's where I can save myself a whole lot of time. I've already measured out these distances, so I'm going to put some construction lines down here. Instead of having to measure that again, I want some consistency, right? So put these 3 strings of dimensions that I have here on the lower elevation as well. Now I can use the edge of the floor to create 1 dimension line that goes just beyond the outermost dimension. I'll do that with the ceiling line as well. Notice I'm leaving a little gap here too, because I don't want that extension line to run into the object line. And we'll add a dimension to the top of this door. And I'm going to go to the top of the door, not the top of the trim. And that should go out to the 2nd string. And I do want that to cross over the wall to show that I'm providing the dimension to the top of that door in that 2nd string. And then I don't really need the 3rd string. There are no wall outlets here on this side, although I suspect that there are and I must have missed them. So let's pretend it doesn't look like I dimensioned the wall outlet. I know I don't have a heater on that side, so we'll just add the dimensions then, and we just need 2 strings on these elevations. 1, 2. And you can also reuse the measurements you made for the guidelines now too. So I'm going to put guidelines for our text here and here, which is set to the 1/8 of an inch, and guidelines for the text above the dimension line here and here too. Perfect. Whoops, it looks like I didn't put a guideline actually down there. No lead came out. There we go. And now we're ready to put in the tick marks. And I want those to go in the same direction as the ones up here, because we're going to read them in the same direction. And once you're done placing all that information where it belongs, you're going to pick this up, turn it, and go ahead and put in your lettering using your guidelines. So this should be 6 feet 8 inches to the top of that door, or 6'6" rather. And then I know the height of the wall is the same as the one here, so I can put 7 feet 7 inches. And now, more or less, both of these elevations are fully dimensioned. So the last thing I wanted to show you is how to put in this symbol. It's just a matter of measuring out the shape. So that you don't draw something messy. So what I did was I drew, I'm just going to put it off to the side here. I used one of the, let's see here, what did I use? Yeah, I used a 1/2 inch. So if we make a construction line going this way, and another one going perpendicular to that first line, you can use those construction lines to measure up a 1/2 inch in 2 places if you want to make sure you're parallel, or if you have a rolling ruler, you can use that tool. So let's make that construction line there. And then you want to measure going across this way in 2 places. 1, 2. draw a construction line going this way. So that's the box in the middle. And then to create the triangles, simply put construction lines diagonally. Let's use the right tool here. Diagonally through the corners. And then draw some lines that go through that in both directions. If we take our 45-degree angle, where that 45 hits that line that got drawn from the center of the box, we can now create the triangles that hit the corners of the box that kind of create the diamond shape. That line should be all one continuous line when you're done. That's why you're doing this with construction lines. Whoops, I didn't quite hit my mark there. And last line in here like this. So you see what I did was just moved around the object. So now I can go back in, and if that's a little bit messy, just clean it up with your object lines. So I'm just going to draw that line in nice and straight, perpendicular to this line. I'm going to straighten this line out. I don't think that ended up being perpendicular, so you can fix those things after. And then straighten out this line here. And then you should have a box you can create in the middle that creates the triangles, like that. And then you just label the triangles. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. That elevation on this wall would be 1. This elevation on this wall here would be 2, 3, 4, and that's how you use an elevation symbol. The other piece that you want to add to this, especially if this is on a separate page, is to direct somebody which page to go to find these elevations. So in the middle of the box you put the page number. So you want to go to page 2 of 2 to find these elevations, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that is the basic symbol we use for interior elevations. Since I didn't add that to this one, I'll add that here. And that's more or less what you're going to be adding to your plans. So your plans should be dimensioned to the edge of the windows, because this is field dimensioned. You can do a similar dimension string here to the edge of the door. Try to put that to the outside though. Try to put those dimensions to the outside. And place dimensions to the edge of the door. What I'm going to do is add those elements, and then I'll just take a final picture of it so you can see an example of what it would look like when it's done.